Welcome everyone to our very first School Diversity Week from home. Throughout the week, you will join us in a series of talks and workshops with incredible guests to celebrate diversity, pride, and inclusion. This masterclass will be a Q&A lasting about 20 minutes, but before we start, here's a reminder of do's and don'ts and how to stay safe while attending the talk. We're just going to watch a short video and be back in a minute.
Hello, we hope you're enjoying loads of interesting activities for School Diversity Week. Millions of young people are a part of this and you must keep safe online. So as part of this, we are moderating and disabling public comments you might make on our social media so we can protect your identities. If you do want to communicate something to us, please just direct message us on our social media platforms, or you can email info@justlikeus.org so we make sure that we're still protecting your identity. Justlikeus.org/betteronline has more information about this and also has some information about where you can go for help or where someone else can go if they need help.
It's without further ado that I'm happy to introduce you to our first masterclass leader, Lady Phyll. She's co-founder and director of UK Black Pride, which promotes cooperation among all Black LGBT people and their friends and family. She's also co-editor of Sister Anthology, collating work from LGBT women of African Caribbean heritage, and director of Kaleidoscope, a UK charity promoting human rights and equality for LGBT people. As difficult as it is to sum up her achievements, she's all around an incredible activist and role model, and we're so proud of having her here today. So hello and welcome.
Hello, Ramses, and thank you so much for having me at Diversity Week. So I'm absolutely honored to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us. I'm really glad to have you here, and I can't wait to hear all your questions and answers and just see what we can do to support Black LGBT people in our community. So we're going to kick off the Q&A with a question from Marco. Marco, you here with us?
Yes, I am. Hello, everyone. Yeah, it's amazing to be here. Thank you, Phil. And my question would be, what does inclusion look like?
Right. Well, that is such a big question to ask at the start. So if I can just really sum up, inclusion is really about that feeling of making sure that we're present in all of our different forms. I use the word intersectionality quite a lot in my thinking and my talking, and also the way I deal with my activism. And just to break down intersectionality before I talk about inclusion, intersectionality is where many of our different facets of what makes up us as a person, race, gender, class, backgrounds, language, ability, disability, where it intersects with each other, often we find that there's an erasure of who we are in certain aspects. So inclusion really is about, regardless of who we are as people, we must be respected for our race, our gender, class, ethnicity, ability, disability. It takes many different forms in terms of sexual orientation, sexuality, and also poverty and status in where you are. If we do not have true inclusion in schools, hospitals, society at large, people will not feel valued, appreciated, or respected. So it's important to remember that we are all very different, nuanced and diverse people that must be respected in all of our facets.
Thank you very much for your amazing answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. I think it's really amazing what you mentioned about making sure that, we're not only respected, but we're valued as people. I think there is sometimes a gap in between being, inclusive and being supportive. And, that gap is something that we really need to work on, as individuals in a society, to make sure that we're not only, tolerating people, but we're actually embracing them and respecting them and making sure they're really included in our spaces.
Absolutely.
So the next question, which sort of ties into that, is from Millie.
Hello, can you guys see me?
Yes, hi Millie.
Okay, hiya. Thank you so much for being here, Phyll.
Thank you.
So the second question that I wanted to ask was, what can we do to support LGBT plus people of colour in schools?
I mean, like Marco's question, Millie, yours is also quite huge. And I think that right now, at this particular point and this juncture that we're facing, we're in a COVID-19 era. We're also dealing with some really serious issues around Black Lives Mattering. So when we talk about how we support LGBTQ people of color in schools, I think it's important to understand that there are so many different challenges around how we're seeing, people of color who also happen to be LGBTQ disproportionately impacted by COVID, and also by the fact that, our TV and our news and our media is showing us so many things that are doesn't feel respectful to our lives. So I think schools, I mean, I'm not going to say schools should rip down their curriculum, but I will say schools should really start looking at what is it that is being taught to our next generation, to our next future leaders. Whilst I was at school, I learnt so much about the Battle of Hastings 1066, but nobody taught me anything about what the empire was about. Nobody taught me about enslavement, slavery, which is all part of that lived experience. Nobody really went into detail about how LGBT plus people have been around for so long. Why is it that we should be respected? What is it that difference looks like? And I would say that, whilst there are also ambassadors on this line like yourselves, that we really need to home into, does our school activity and education speak to the lived experiences of those who are in place? And if it doesn't serve that purpose, then we have to really reframe the conversation and shape the narrative differently. And I know that we have amazing teachers that are doing a good job on very little resource, but we do have to take it back to basics, because if children feel that there's no conversation about their families, families, and the history, there is a sense of lost identity. And with that lost identity will mean that inclusion will not be at the heart of everything we do.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was some really, really important points, and especially relevant with everything that's going on now. So thank you.
Thank you, Millie.
Thank you. So our next question is going to be by Siraj.
Hey, can you see me or hear me?
I can hear you, Suraj.
Yeah.
That's
So,
the
here
start.
you are.
There we go. Here we are. Thank you for having me and thank you for being here, Phyll. My question is, we've just talked about how it can be tricky for LGBT plus students of color. Are you aware of any services for them?
Wow. So there are so many different services there. Thank you, Suraj, for your question. There are so many services out there, but I think you've got different organizations focusing on different aspects. So when you look at AKT, for example, which is the Albert Kennedy Trust, there's some work that they do around homelessness, and the work that they have actually researched shows that 40% of their service users happen to be BAME, and I'll spell out the word BAME, which is Black, Asian, Minority, Ethnic. Then you have, people like Tanya Compass, who is a youth engagement worker and activist, who has been doing a lot with cutie pock people, which is queer, trans, intersex, people of colour, and she's been raising funds around a hardship. There are some fact sheets, and forgive me because I forget the name, but those fact sheets which might have like 10 points you can do to stay safe about your own being when you're going out there in society, what's being done in schools. But I think more importantly, just like us, is doing the groundwork. I've got a young future leader, Ramses. He is interviewing me. So this is the work that is happening, and we now need to utilize the conversation of amplifying young people's voices who happen to be LGBTQI plus within spaces. So I think there's so many fact sheets and information out there. I always say Google's your friend, but just make sure that we're safe about the information we're pulling off. And importantly, my shameless plug is always UK Black Pride. We have youth engagement officers, we have safe spaces in which we can discuss who we are and how we're experiencing certain challenges and how we navigate the world as it stands right now. And I hope that's answered that, Suraj.
It has. Thank you so much. There's quite a few things there for us to go look at then.
So hoping I can stop blushing in a minute. But yeah, I can confirm UK Black Pride always shares like so many resources. And yeah, thank you for recognizing how important the work Just Like Us is doing as well in schools. This is, what we're trying to do, as you mentioned, to make sure that we're, boosting and listening to those voices, and that people can get confident, since, very young age in their identity and in their community. And hopefully they're going to, reform the society in a couple of years. The next question is from Rory. Are you here with us? Yeah?
Yes, I'm here. Hi, Lady Phyll. So my question is, what is your favorite thing about Pride Month and what would you change about it?
Ooh, okay. I wasn't expecting that, Rory. Okay, my favorite thing about Pride Month is, there's so many. How do I pick? It's probably knowing that there's going to be a coming of people coming together in all of our different identities, black, brown, white. We are just showcasing who we are, the talent that we see on particular stages, the speeches which are empowering, and knowing where pride has originated from, the amplification of our difference. And I think there's something liberating about people coming together who have a shared commonality. And that shared commonality is that we all want equal rights and we all want to be seen and heard 365 days of the year, 24/7. I think what I would change about Pride Month is that we shouldn't just have a month to celebrate who we are, because we do not stop being LGBTQI people. I would also change that it shouldn't be so decorative, because it should be meaningful. It should be about real life experiences with actions about what we do post Pride. And yeah, I would probably say to organizations that, are celebrating Pride and marching down the streets. Obviously, it's different this year. That what are you going to do when you stop marching to still ensure that you're valuing LGBTQI people plus people throughout the whole year? I hope that answers that, Rory. But I could go on and on and on.
No, yeah, definitely. I think the word liberating definitely is one I relate to and one I felt at my first Pride. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and there is like that warmth in, feeling part of a community and, in embracing our history as LGBT plus people. But yeah, as you mentioned, there needs to be a conversation about, what actions we can take towards inclusion, and not just, in June. It needs to be an open conversation, which leads me, I guess, to the next question by Iona.
Hello, can you
Hi,
see me?
yes, we
Hiya.
can hear you. Hello.
Thank you so much for your insights. They're so interesting. So my question is, in your opinion, what
what are the greatest opportunities at the moment for both the Black Lives Matter and LGBT plus movements, and how can we make sure we don't miss those opportunities?
Brilliant question, Iona. I think right now what we're seeing is such an intersectional approach to really ensuring Black Lives Matter, and really also looking at how prides are having to be digital and virtual in an innovative and creative way. I think what I have seen is that there are some people who are really feeling this in very different ways. So there's an amount of sensitivity and compassion that needs to be applied to this. Um, I've seen young people come out. I'm absolutely loving the fact that our next generation are holding that torch up and saying, enough is enough. I've seen an amount of solidarity that is so powerful and so beautiful and so overwhelming that it makes me sit back or stand back and say that my voice doesn't need to be heard in this. I just need to make sure that our next generation is comfortable, they're supported, and they feel safe in whether they're chanting, whether they are signing a petition, whether they are, speaking to parents or carers that haven't historically understood what it means to be LGBTQI plus, because I come from a family background which is very, very strict in terms of religion, faith, and belief. But the conversations I have with my parents is really about breaking it down to them about the inequalities. So the opportunities that I think I'm really seeing is solidarity, support, an intersectional and a very inclusive approach to affecting change in a meaningful way, one that is not performative or decorative, one that's not a tokenistic gesture. And when you see people's social media filled with discussions around Black Lives Matter and how white allies can do better in whether it's donations, whether it's reading particular books, that is it's so wonderful to see in my time. It really is. Even though I pretend to be 21, but I'm not.
Thank you so much for your answer. I think, as I mentioned, it's really great, and it goes back to that sense of community and of, sharing our stories to people, because as much as some people don't really understand LGBT plus identities, even if, we're trying to fix that, they understand maybe racism, they maybe understand discrimination, they can, find something in their life that relates them to that, and that's the beauty of intersectionality. And I think it's really important to have that conversation and to make sure that we can share our stories, and we have platforms to do so in order to make sure that other people can relate to them and can take action to support them.
So Ramses, can I just add something to that? Because I think something where we've been frightened to talk about, and obviously not myself because I'm a Black, African lesbian woman, is we don't talk about racism enough, whether it's in schools or any number of institutions that we're in. And we have to usualize the conversation of racism because of the systemic and the structural challenges that it poses. And I think for young people in schools that may be facing an amount of racism and don't know where to turn to, goes back to Siraj's question about, what is out there for them. For us, UK Black Pride is really wanting to support just like us. So when you go into schools, you have information at the ready from those who have those authentic voices, who have had to deal with racism in such a way. So I just think let's usualize and not normalize, because I don't know what the word normal really means, but let's usualize the conversation about what people go through. We can't none of us are free until all of us are free. And that's the saying that comes from Audre Lorde or Toni Morrison. And we've got to really live and believe that.
Yeah, I mean, it is, it is an uncomfortable conversation to have, but we need to, to face those problems. You can't ignore them if you really want to take action to solve them. And, as you mentioned earlier, these are conversations that needs to start in schools because students are, the people who are facing this and maybe don't know who to turn to, or they maybe can't even have the resources to learn their own history. So yeah, there needs to be a conversation about our identities and our struggles and how we can make sure that our future is brighter and brighter going on. Before we hijack the conversation, the Q&A, and keep talking about this, I've got a question about UK Black Pride from Laura. Laura, are you here?
Can you hear me?
Yes, welcome.
Thank you for joining us. So I have a question in relation to what you've just been talking about. So how can I, as a student, contribute to and get involved in UK Black Pride? Are there any volunteering opportunities?
Yes. Now this is where I get excited. So thank you, Laura, for your question. UK Black Pride is open to all. Although we talk about it being run by us and for us as LGBTQ plus people of colour, we also speak to our allies and supporters about getting involved. It may be volunteering for the main event. Obviously, again, it's very different. On our website, you will see volunteering opportunities. It may be being part of the wider team. And, as a young person, you, not me, Laura, we are always looking to hear from that next generation that's helping us inform how we shape UK Black Pride. When I started it 15 years ago with a number of other people, language was very different. We were not using language around non-binary, gender fluid, gender neutral, and I think that and gender diversity. There's so much that we can learn from how young people express themselves now that needs to be fed into our pride. Yeah, and I think it should be fed into all prides, not just UK Black Pride. But yeah, please, it's ukblackpride.org.uk, another shameless plug, but do volunteer your time, your services, and help educate us on how we can have an even better pride that leads to the kindness, the compassion, and the solidarity, the liberation, the empowerment of how we see ourselves now and for the future.
Thank you. That's amazing to learn that there are so many ways we can help. Yeah, great. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I think it's great that you always show that intersectionality is like it goes two ways. Like it's not about teaching something. It's about yes teaching, but also like learning from the person you talk to and making sure that every action moving forward actually resonates with all those single voices that contribute to that action that's been planned, and that's really amazing. Our next question is from Dominic.
Hiya.
Hi, Dominic.
Hi, good to see you, and thank you so much for being involved in School Diversity Week. So this next question is from Rita, and Rita wants to know, how can we get involved in Black Pride, UK Black Pride, while lockdown measures are in place?
Right, okay, another Black Pride question that I love. So Rita, thank you for your question via Dominic. Like I was just saying about getting involved via volunteering, that's always a good way. And, I make no bones about UK Black Pride costs money to put on. So if people have donations that they can give to UK Black Pride, it allows us to pay for people that are speaking, that will be performing. And just to let you know what will be happening for UK Black Pride, this year we're doing some work which is called Pride Inside, and it'll be working alongside Para Pride, Amnesty International, Stonewall, that really looks at our theme around home, whilst many of us are on lockdown at home, and kindness and compassion, but combating loneliness and isolation for many of us that are in homes that maybe our parents or carers or other adults don't necessarily accept our being. So getting involved, it will mean, you can join on the Zoom link, listen to conversations of mindfulness, helpful tips on how to navigate society or different communities. We'll have conversations which may be more political around how we lobby government for real change in understanding LGBT plus people's lives, whether that's on the Gender Recognition Act, whether it's on Black Lives Matter. Like Iona's question was, what can we do differently, or what are the opportunities? And importantly, we've got people showcasing their talents. So even if you wanted to get involved in a way of being part of it, we will have an open call to get involved if you wanted to speak or do something. And then if I can just add quickly, Ramses, for August, we'll be holding a main Pride event, because this year is our 15th celebration. We've been going for 15 years, started from 200 people to 10,000 people. And this big event is going to look at young people of colour in the context of everything that's happening. And there's going to be a special designated space for young queer people to have their voices heard, to again give us actions as UK Black Pride about what we do going forward. And it's going to be amazing. I can't go into too much of it, otherwise my team will be very upset, but it would be great for everyone and anyone to get involved. And those that don't have data to join, we are looking at where we've raised money, is we will be looking at how we can top up people's data so that they can actually join in, especially for many of our asylum seekers and refugees and those that are young that don't necessarily have the money to top up their phones.
Thank you so much for sharing that and for the sneak peek. I'm sure it's a really exciting opportunity, and I think it's great that you're also making sure that everyone can contribute. We've got another question from Marco.
Hi, it's
Hi, Marco.
me again.
Hello.
Sorry, my question very much resonates with the previous ones, and it's built on that, which is, what is, in your opinion, the best way for young people to get involved with grassroots activism, like activism in general?
So I think where we saw, thank you, Marco, for the question, where we saw the video from Taz earlier on about keeping safe in a space that we're doing things online, I would say to young people, make sure that you do a little bit of research about the group or activity that you're going to join. We've seen with Black Lives Matter this weekend, there was a number of protests which was an anti-black protest, an anti-Black Lives Matter protest. I wouldn't want any young person to be in a position where they felt so unsafe. So it's about really keeping abreast of what some of those things are, being put out on social media platforms. If in doubt, you can even email or get in contact with UK Black Pride to say, this is happening, do you know anything about it? Because UK Black Pride is very much like an umbrella of many different organizations, queer LGBTQ plus organizations, and also Black and Asian organizations at the same time. So where you might not know, we will be able to get that information out to you quite quickly, like saying to you, be safe, actually this is not the time to go on this march, or actually you can read this particular book. So there are ways of getting in contact to feel safe about the activities you're taking forward.
Thank you. And that comes back also to what you mentioned about students, about age. Like, there is always something that can be done that is appropriate to, to your means or to your age or, to your abilities. But there are still like lots of ways to get involved. We've got just one last question, which is from Georgia.
Oh. Hello?
Hi.
Hello.
Hiya. This is really cool. Thank you for being here. My question is, how do you stay positive and look after your mental health as an activist?
Georgia, so this is another huge question, and I've learned in my 20 odd years of activism that it's actually okay to not be okay, and it's okay for me to say, today I'm tired. Today I've seen something on the news where a black man in America his life was taken, and that affected me in so many different ways. It's okay for me to shut off and not answer messages. I have a 25-year-old daughter. I know that's why I can't be 21, but my daughter sings and she has a voice of an angel. And often I say to her, you know what, Mum is feeling really rubbish today. I would just love to hear a song. And that keeps me going. That really does. And, I do take the odd walk here and there. And I love reading. I absolutely love reading so many different types of books that I can lose and immerse myself in them, that shuts me away from what is happening in the world, because we should be allowed to do that. Audre Lorde said, self-care is self-preservation, and it's okay to preserve ourselves. It's okay for us to stop, stand still, press the reset button. And another thing that I do, and I'm not advocating that everyone does this, I carry so much within me because so many people need help, support, and guidance, that I do have a good cry every now and again, because I need to release it. I need to let go of it and be able to move forward to be able to support the next person. And that's why I say to especially young children, young people who are going through what is happening in today's climate, it is okay to not be okay, but please recognize that there are so many different avenues of support and you're not alone. Do not ever feel that you're dealing with this in isolation. There are so many groups that you can speak to. You've got Ramses, who I see as a role model and an inspiration. Reach out to those that because the time is quite heavy and it's quite hard right now, but none of us are alone. Having this School Diversity Week, I hope it goes a long way to showing, ambassadors, and of course, more importantly, our young people, that just because we're coping with so much, it doesn't mean we have to cope with it in isolation. So thank you for that question. It's really important.
Yeah, I think it's very important to have, conversation about self-care at this time, because not only, it's a really traumatic time, especially for Black people, but we're all living sort of like a surreal experience with the lockdown. And we don't have, at least we don't see the network of support that we had before, because, schools are closed and we can't see our teachers, we can't see our friends. But at the same time, this is still, a chance to reach out to people and, to check in on your friends and to make sure that we still maintain and develop a sense of community and of support, because we need it now more than ever. So thank you for mentioning that as well, because it's really important, especially at this time. So this is going to be a wrap. So thank you so much for your time. You definitely made so many good points, and I'm sure we all have a lot to think about and a lot to do to act on, those thoughts. This concludes this masterclass, but this is just the first one of an amazing series of workshops for our School Diversity Week. And if you go on our website, Just Like Us .org, on the School Diversity Week page, or on our Facebook page, Just Like Us UK, you can find the links to the other ones, and you can see more ways to be involved. Of course, what Lady Phyll has got to say about her work and activism doesn't finish here. So you can find her on Twitter as Miss Lady Phyll, or you can follow UK Black Pride on all social media. And as she mentioned, feel free to reach out to either Just Like Us or to her network, and we're happy to offer any support that you might need. If you need any resources about how to be safe online, or you just want to read a bit more about being LGBT+ at home, we've also got a Better Online page on our website. But thank you so much for joining us today and for listening to us. And thank you, Lady Phyll, for answering all those amazing questions.